Everyone calls me Steve-O. That was a nickname given to me in the 80s, but my real name is Steve Ehrnst, and I'm from Flint, Michigan. Born and raised in Flint, Michigan, and born in 1950, so I'm going to be 69 this year. There were motorcyclists in my family, but they were not motorcycles. My father wasn't, my mother wasn't, my grandfather was not, but he was always interested in what was something an inexpensive way to get around. So he bought a Riverside scooter because it was cheap on gas. But then he realized he didn't really like it that much. He was older, but us kids, were really all about it. So we ended up getting that little Riverside scooter, and we turned it into a dirt bike. It was a step through, Riverside scooter, but for us it was a dirt bike. We were 10 or something. So we rode the dickens out of the Riverside scooter, and that was from that time on, I knew that I wanted to be on two wheels. I just loved that so much. Just riding that little scooter around in the grass, in the fields alone was really exciting to me. So in my mind is always to have a motorcycle. But my father, not being a motorcyclist, didn't really want me to have one anyway, because they're dangerous. But now the 60s have happened, and Honda has come to the United States, and, you meet the nicest people on a Honda, and motorcycling's becoming sort of okay, it's sort of becoming more accepted rather than, wild ones like Marlon Brando from the 50s, which is kind of the image it had prior to that. So they're a little more amenable to it. By the time I got to be 15, I was just dying to have a motorcycle. And I was just dying. And my father got this bright idea. He told my mom, he said, I'm going to go to him and offer him that Buick sitting out there, which is almost brand new, free. Turn it over to him. Or we'll let him go to work and earn the money to buy his own motorcycle. And we'll see what happens. And she said, he's going to pick the bike. I just know it, And he pitched that to me, and there was no doubt in my mind, because they weren't going to let me have one, But when that arrangement or that offer was made, I took the bike. So I turned down an almost new car, and so I could go to work for my grandfather and pay for a bike. And my grandfather was nice enough to advance the money for the motorcycle. Wow. Because he knew what I wanted. I wanted a Bridgestone, and so we went and got a Bridgestone 90, but it sat in front of my grandfather's place while I retiled most of his motel room floors for the whole summer because to pay for it. So it was a real torture sitting there working for my grandfather, looking at my brand new motorcycle in the parking lot.
That was part of the deal. He enjoyed that.
Was part of the deal. And so that bike was really cool. It was kind of fast for a little kid. It was only a 90. The 175 was the one that everyone remembers, and that's the one that's in the Barber Museum. Looked kind of like that, a candy apple red. Anyway, two-stroke, hard to keep running. First bike to have the oil mix, in. So that was handy, for a kid not keeping track of that. And I had a good time on the bike. I went all over, went to the lake, picked up girls, did everything that you do on a motorcycle that age, and had a great time with it, and found out about some dirt activities at that time in 60, I want to say this is 65, 65, and got interested and went out to watch these, and they were flat track races that were being set up, and the family that was setting them up was the Springsteen family of Jay Springsteen, who's a famous flat track racer, but it was his father. Right. And his father was promoting motorcycle racing and trying to get kids into motorcycle racing. And so they built these oval tracks. And I would go out and watch, and his father encouraged me to use my Bridgestone on the track because it was flat enough for a street bike, And then he took the muffler off and he did some tuning on it. And I was at the age and time, I was fairly fast on it. So we started having races, kind of kids races, that age group. And that summer I was pretty good on it and won most of the races that I raced in. And it was against Kawasaki 90s and other kids on bikes like that, I did have a bad crash while I was out there. I never told my father I was doing this racing. And because I knew he wouldn't approve of it. He was not really fond of the motorcycle anyway. So I had a bad crash, and it was a really bad crash, but I got home, and the bike was pretty much destroyed, and he was really angry with me over it. And he was one of these fathers that even if you had a broke arm, he'd still whoop your butt, for what you did. But we put the bike back together. But I do remember that Evel Knievel was really big at the time, so we made a jump, big dirt jump. And because Evel Knievel did this, we would get all the little kids in the neighborhood that were too stupid to know better, like my little sister and his friends, and we'd line them up on the other side of the jump and see how many of them we could jump over with the Triumph, And I remember getting to about 8 or 10 of them until the parents found out, and they freaked out that we were jumping over the kids, like but we never hurt anyone. No one got hurt. So that's what we did. And the bike was pretty, for what it was pretty good. Hard to keep running, of course, points, Triumph, all that sort of thing. My father was never much of a mechanic, and so he struggled with it. And eventually I left home. I left home fairly early, mainly because of issues over societal issues, Nixon, me, hippie, all those kind of things. We parted ways, and he asked me to leave, actually, when I was 18. So I left home, moved to the Virgin Islands, because I had a problem with the draft at the time, and I wasn't going. And so I was leaving the country, but I wasn't going to Canada because it was too cold. And I could sail a boat. I had learned to sail a boat at camp, at a family camp. So I said, I'll go down to the Caribbean and sail boats. That was, of course, teenager idea, So I moved to St. Croix in the Virgin Islands, got a 90cc Honda, and the island was only 15 by 30 miles, so I could ride around on that. And then eventually I bought a Kawasaki 175, rode around on that, and that's all I had on the island. That's all you needed, really. You didn't really need a car on that island. It's so small. And then the island, the whole black-white thing was heating up all over the continent and down there too. And the Black Panthers got in there and spurred up there because the natives that lived on the island, the residents were mostly black. And so we that were white people that lived there were a small number. I was there about a year, and there was several uprisings, and it got so I couldn't even go to work because people were throwing rocks, and it just got to be really bad. And besides, I kind of felt bad about me being down in the Caribbean where all these other guys are getting killed in Vietnam. And so I thought I needed to do something for the war effort. So I said, I'll come back. And I came back and became a draft counselor for probably 2 years, counseling people how to get out of the draft. So I did that for a while. But I went to college, but during this whole time, I was never... I could have been called to go at any time. I had a low number on the lottery, and so I could have been called to go. But the system, by the time I got back in 70-ish or 71, was kind of mired up in problems, and I just didn't worry about it. I never got called. I did go to college, so I did have a student deferment, but if you kept dropping that, they would stop giving it back to you. So I didn't have one, even though I was going to college. And eventually it just sort of timed out on me. The war kind of, fizzled out, and I was never called, and so I didn't have to go. But I was here from 70-ish, 71 or so through whenever it ended in 74 or 5, something like that. And that was a little bit of an issue. But during that time that I came back, it was the only time in my motorcycle history that I actually did not have or own a bike of my own. I was trying to go to college. There were just things going on. I just didn't have a motorcycle. I didn't have money. In fact, I didn't have a car even then at that time. And so I didn't have a bike, but the Triumph was always at the house, so I could always ride the Triumph when I went home. And my brother, he had gotten married and moved on, so the Triumph was always sitting around if we could get it running. and so, but lo and behold, that the whole idea of motorcycling came back in my mind after not long, a couple of years of being without a motorcycle. I was thinking, man, I really want a motorcycle. I had a girlfriend at the time that was anti-motorcycles and didn't want me to have one. And so I didn't get one, but I really wanted one. And what I wanted was a Harley because I never had one of those. Now it was big enough to ride one. So finally we broke up. First thing I did, I mean, we weren't broke up a month. I went and bought a new 77 Sportster at Lakeshore Harley Davidson in Chicago, because now I was in Chicago. Meanwhile, I completed college, got a degree in blind rehabilitation, oddball degree in Western Michigan University. So working with the blind and ended up working with the VA blind rehab programs around the country. That was my whole career. That's what I did for my whole living, was working at that Chicago one, at the one in California in Palo Alto, and then that's how I got here. The one in Birmingham. They're regional programs. They serve like 11, 12 states. So anyway, went out and bought the Harley, and then came Bronson had come out, you know. I still had memories of Easy Rider, but I wasn't really a biker gang type. But I kind of envisioned myself that way a little bit more of a badass. And around Chicago, that's what everyone rode, was Harleys, because Milwaukee was right there. And so all the bar hopping and stuff, I enjoyed that immensely. Just riding my Harley to the bars. I was single now. Then I got to transfer to California, which was great. Packed my Harley up in a U-Haul and off to California, and that was where I was introduced to sport touring. And sport touring was really what made it for me in motorcycling.
So we're talking what, late 70s, early 80s?
This is probably 78, maybe 1978, I would say, or I bought it 77, 78. It was the first trip I took on a bike. On that bike, 2-gallon gas tank. I went from San Francisco to Seattle on the coast, and I just loved it. I mean, it was just, I just camped out along the road. It was just
you
wonderful.
You ride your Harley then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. 2-gallon.
Sportster?
2-gallon Sportster. Run out of gas a lot, and we just borrow gas from farmers and stuff, you know, on back roads, you know, or buy gas from people if I ran out. But it got pretty good mileage. It could make it 100 miles usually. And in any case, I just love that motorcycle. And in fact, to this day, I've owned hundreds of motorcycles, but my fondest memories are traveling on that Sportster, just because of the time period, you know. And what I did, you know, just a bedroll and a few things, you know, and I went all over. On that first trip, I met a guy from Canada who had been on the road on a Triumph 650 for the whole summer. And this is the fall. He'd been on the road for 3 months, and he'd rebuilt the motor on the road. And he just like blew my mind. This guy, he was traveling all over Canada and all over the U.S. and all over Mexico on this bike. So I traveled with him. I met him in Northern California, and he was going home to Edmonton, Alberta. So I said, shit, I'll just go. So I just kept going. Instead of stopping in Seattle, I just kept going with him all the way up through Calgary and went through Banff and Lake Louise and all that stuff. Wonderful trip. And so that just sealed it. That's what I'm going to do with all my free time, is when I get vacation time, I'm getting on my bike and going somewhere. And that's pretty much what I did every year until I met her. I would just get on my bike, and you know, when I got my vacation time, usually go up the coast of California, or sometimes up to the Sierras or whatever. Now, traveling on a Harley Sportster is not easy, because not only because of the gas, you know, there's a reliability factor points, and it also required straight 60 weight oil, and straight 60 weight oil is hard to come by. And it also doesn't start when you get up if you go camping in the mountains. So I had to carry oil all the time, and I had to switch oil on the trips. Depending on where, if I was going to the mountains, I had to switch to lighter weight. Fortunately, right at that time, in that mid-70s, multi-weight oil came out. You know, like 10W40. Like, that was great oil for that Harley, because it would be thick enough when it was hot to... Anyway, so that was pretty much my life. Just that Harley, that Sportster, that 77 Sportster. Actually, the bike magazines I bought it in spite of every review about it. There was not one good review. It was the end of AMF.
Right.
Everything was bad about it. The magazines were just saying they need to go out of business. I mean, their stuff sucks, but it was the image I wanted,
Right.
And I remember on the first trip, the first trip did everything because here I am, just left, the Bay Area. I've never been on a motorcycle trip ever. I don't know where I'm really going, and I'm going over the Golden Gate Bridge. Okay, it was the Golden Gate Bridge or the Golden Gate Bridge, because that's where the coast highway is. And I hear this loud kind of thunder behind me, and I look back, and there's a whole bunch of bikes behind me. And they pull up next to me as I'm going over the bridge, and they're much older guys. They're all on Harleys, and they kind of look at each other, and then they point at me, and then just keep going. So I ride over, the bridge, and it was the original Hells Angels, the Oakland chapter, and they let me be in the front. I knew
So
that.
you got that on your tombstone then. You led the Hells Angels over.
And that endeared me right away to those clubs, Gypsy Jokers, Hells Angels, and they. But I never was I never joined any kind of club like that because that just wasn't really me. I was more into the sport aspect. Even though a Harley doesn't sound like a sport bike, at the time it was a fast bike, and I rode it like a sport bike. And at that same time, Alice's Restaurant in the foothills of California was a very popular motorcycle hangout. Ducati was importing their bikes into Cupertino right there. And so all the bikes that I would see at Alice's Restaurant were Ducati 900 Super Sports. And I would run with those guys with my Sportster, but the Ducatis were way, way better. But the Ducatis weren't always running.
Yeah.
but they were way better. And so
So you were traveling on the
doing a lot of
travel with your wife. You had to get
she I told her, I said, this is what I do for vacation. You got to be in with this or not. So that was a good thing because I had bad experience in the past with women that did not approve of motorcycles. So I decided when I get one this time, she's going to ride, or it's going to be part of my life, and there's not going to be any issues. And since then, it seems like all my friends that I know have issues over that, and have over the last 30 years, have kids, have women that don't approve or whatever, something like that, So that I feel like I was wise to set those rules down, or at least find someone that was interested. She doesn't ride with me now because she's just lost interest in it. What caused her to lose interest was she liked the Harley thing a lot, the sitting position and all that, and the cruising. Mm-hmm. But when I got a BMW R1100S sport bike, that changed everything. Right. The sitting position, what I wanted to do with it, which was go up to Highway 60 and such as. That changed everything. One ride on that, around the corner, leaned over, and she was done. So that was the end of that.
Yeah.
And that was fine with me because I'm of the opinion that a motorcycle is meant for one person. I just feel that way.
They handle so much better.
I'm not a two-up person. I would do it if I had to meet a woman or something, maybe, but I wouldn't choose that way to ride ever. And if you look around, a lot of my bikes have the rear pegs off.
Yeah.
For that reason. I don't want to take anyone on the back. But anyway, so we got a bigger Harley when we moved here. Right when we moved here, they were about to go out of business. Harley Davidson was just about to go out of business, 82. AMF declared they were going bankrupt on Harley, or they were cutting them loose. And the family bought it back. Willie G and friends and whatever bought it back, and I bought the first Willie G or family 82, I think it was, or it wasn't viable. Actually, when I bought it, it looked like it was the end. So I said I better get a new one now, and that was sort of my justification to her. Although my bike was 5 years old then, so it wasn't that much of a justification. But back in those days, I only had one motorcycle. I mean, I had one. I rode it until I used it up, and then I sold it, and bought another one, or usually bought another one, then sold it. I didn't have a fleet of motorcycles. I just, and it's basically a money thing. I just didn't, we're building a house and stuff. I, just couldn't have a lot of motorcycles, So, anyway, and there were only certain bikes I liked, but I liked that BMW. I really liked that BMW. It was sort of like a vampire tasting blood and wanting more. Got interested in going to the track after that, and I couldn't take that on the track. You could, but it wasn't really a track bike. And met this guy, Stan Zangle, who did race, and he was older too, and he was really a Ducati enthusiast, and he talked me into buying one of his Ducatis, which was a 996 Superbike, Vance Hines. It was actually a race bike that was when Vance Hines and Fast by Faraci made these bikes just for privateer. It was a privateer program. You bought this kit, and I bought one of those bikes. It was his bike, and that was my introduction to Ducati. And that's a hard bike to ride. Now, even to this day, I've owned probably 30 Ducatis. That's still probably the most punishing one I've ever owned. It had a real heavy clutch. It's very stiffly sprung, But I didn't track that bike because it was sort of my pride and joy bike. I went and bought a Suzuki to track.
Yeah.
So I tracked a 600 Suzuki, which I crashed multiple times. And that was a perfect bike for going to the track because it could crash and be put back together pretty easily, where trellis frame bikes bend and they don't work out so well. So I crashed the Suzuki many times, got my WERA license, raced for a couple years, and fortunately I was racing at the time Barber's Track Open. Really? So I was a full-on WERA racer, not a winning racer, but I was participating. I was participant level in the 600 class, which is not a great class to be in, because it's just kind of vicious in that class. But
what was the closest track?
I did all my training at Talladega Short Track at the Grand Prix track. Yeah. I went there every weekend, and this is before track days. Right. You had to have a race license, and then you could rent the track. You get a bunch of guys together, rent the track. It cost $500 to rent Talladega for a day.
That's a track day.
No,
for one guy.
Right. No ambulance required.
Wow, yeah.
It was just, you got $500, have at it, boys. That was pretty much it. Yeah. So that was the only way you could get to practice, was to get a license. But a WERA license wasn't real hard to get, They gave you, it was answering 10 questions, after a little bit of instruction. And if you missed any questions, they corrected them for you. So it was pretty easy to get a WERA license. And but I wasn't very successful at it. Stan, on the other hand, was quite successful. And the last year we did it, he took fourth in the senior division nationwide on a 748, I think, 748 Ducati. But I learned a lot about sport riding from going to the track all the time. I mean, I had my knee down. I learned how to do that. I just learned all that kind of stuff about sport riding that I really didn't know, because every time I went to the mountains with that BMW, there were all these people that were faster than me. Yeah. And I could never figure out why. I mean, I just couldn't. I just went as fast as I could go, but I just never could get it. But after racing for a couple of years, that all changed completely, because then I learned how to go faster on corners, and once I learned that, the whole table turned, where I could be the fastest person. I could go to 29 Dreams and be the fastest one riding up and down the roads, not all the time, but enough of the time where it fed my ego.
Sure.
And during that time I was into 999s, and I had 4 999s. I crashed all of them but one, going too fast. Yeah. One on 60. I crashed them all over the place, but I really like that model a lot, the 999 model, and so that was what I was riding during the time of, I was tracking the 600, riding the 999 on the street, and 29 Dreams was booming. I mean, it was the place to go. I was there every weekend, And we went to the mountains. I met guys that went up, and we would go to the mountains and ride, and none of that's changed. Last weekend I was in Robbinsville. I do that. I still do that all the time. Did a little more touring on the BMW. Oh, I retired from the VA. When I retired, it was on my bucket list to just get on my bike with no, sort of like I did when I had vacation time, but with no time limit.
Right.
So that summer that I retired, I just got on my BMW and left. And she was good about it. I just rode, and I rode for, I don't know, 8 weeks or something like that. And
Just
I went
America?
U.S. and Canada,
Okay, cool.
and got as far as Pemberton, British Columbia. But some days I only made it like 100 miles because I was just checking out stuff and camping. I went to BMW rallies, top of the Rockies. I just kind of just did. It was on my bucket list to do it. I'm glad I did it. I was able to retire at 49, so I was young enough to. It was a kind of a hot summer I chose, but I wouldn't do it now. So I'm glad I did it then because it was kind of a grueling trip. I did it by myself, and I had lots of tire changes on the way, and had some mechanical issues, but not many because it was a new BMW. So mostly it ran pretty good the whole time, But that was my big walkabout, I never did a trip that big. But after I got back, I had a taste back for traveling. So I did often travel to Michigan on my BMW, or, up to the mountains, or to Florida, or, I got a ST4S after that, a Ducati tour bike after that. That was my touring bike. Toured around on that, went to Florida a few times, went to the mountains a few times. But as time went along, I got more interested in just the sport aspect of it. So I still have a BMW 800 there, ST, which I did quite a bit of traveling on it. It's got like 20-some thousand miles on it, but I don't ride it very much now because it's a little bit slower. It's more of a sewing machine kind of motorcycle. It's not really a super exciting bike. But it's good in town. I mean, I ride it around town just if I'm running errands and stuff. It's just an all-around good bike, Gets about 60 miles to the gallon, Got the fuel filler on the side, I mean, it's a well-designed bike. I bought it new, 2012. Had it ever since, and but I don't ride it very much because I have just lately. But I could change. This could change. Next year I could say, Mom, I'm going to start going out to California again or something. So I'm keeping it for that reason, mainly. But mostly what I do now is I ride, somewhere around this time after the R1100S, I started what I considered the search for the perfect motorcycle. I wanted the perfect motorcycle. And the perfect motorcycle to me was not the motorcycle that would do everything well, like tour and sport. It had to be perfect. It had to have perfect power, perfect handling, perfect suspension. And I could never find it. There would always be something wrong with the bikes that I had, so I started changing everything I owned. I bought wheels, I bought suspension products, I upgraded anything performance I could on all of them. Spent thousands of dollars upgrading anything that I owned. And what's in here is a testament to that. All these have forged wheels, Terminoni exhaust systems. And I've never regretted that because every one of these bikes are at least 10 times better than they were when they were new because of that. I mean, significantly better. One particular friend buyer that buys all my bikes, basically, he's bought at least 6 from me. And anytime I'm ready to sell a bike, I call him, and if he's interested, he gets first choice. And for that reason, because he knows he's buying a bike that has had the best oil in it, has had everything done to it. It's not going to have an electrical issue. I wouldn't sell a bike to anyone that had something wrong with it, just because I just don't think that's a cool thing to do, Or if it did have something wrong with it that I couldn't fix, I would make that known. Right. But I fix everything, so there's nothing in this stable that doesn't run perfectly right now. I mean, nothing leaks. All batteries are good. I mean, they all got good tires. I mean, there's nothing at any mediocre level because I won't even let a tire get past halfway down. I'll change it. I change it on my own changer right there. So I'm really particular about my bikes being in that search for the perfect bikes. I try to keep them that way too, and their performance, And like I said, I spend a lot on it. I send all my suspension parts go to a place in North Carolina called Cogent Dynamics. He builds all my suspension for me on everything. Whatever I buy, I take the forks off and just mail them to him. Whatever, it could be a brand new bike, I'll send them to him, and he'll redo them and make them better. And it's always noticeable, always noticeable. So to me, it's worth it. This is for riding. This is not for bling. I mean, I do this for the riding feeling, the riding quality of the motorcycle. In my book, number one, suspension. That's where you start. Engine mods are way down the line. These bikes are all so fast now. You really don't need any of these engine. You don't need any of these, really. You could make them 20. It's like that Triumph right there that makes on a dyno. It might make 40 horsepower. It's a 900. Okay, the lady that took it on the trail. I mean, I think it's rated at 50 by Triumph. It's a carbureted one. I mean, there's a place in LA I can send that motor to, and they'll build it to make it 80 horsepower. But why would I do it when the bike sitting on the other side has 180 horsepower? What's the point? In the old days, that's what it was all about. Yeah. That's really why I had the Harley. It had the biggest motor. There was not a Norton Triumph that could beat my Sportster. I mean, I could smoke all those Nortons and Triumphs that my buddies had, and that's why I had the Sportster, because it had a 1,000cc motor. They had 750 motors. It just weren't as fast. And it could have been who was riding it too. I mean, a lot of times it comes down to that, but that was up in the Midwest, so there wasn't any curves. We were racing. So in my quest for the perfect bike, this is what I've ended up with. And really, at this point, I've discontinued my magazine subscriptions, mainly because I don't like the way Cycle World Motorcycles went to a picture book style. And I just, there's nothing out there left for me at this time that's better. I can afford it now to buy a new bike if I want to, but there's just nothing better. I bought the Kawasaki. The Kawasaki was a retro buy, but it has all that modern stuff on it. It has traction control and ABS, Now they have lean angle ABS. They have lean angle traction control. These are more kind of tweaks to what the already existing things, I've ridden those bikes. I've not seen that as like a must-have. Now the manufacturers, of course, this is perfect for them if new stuff comes out, because then you have to have, the
upgrade.
Yeah, you have to have. You don't have ABS. Oh my God, you got to have one with ABS. And I would agree with that. ABS is really good on a motorcycle. So I would say, yeah, you need ABS, And so those kind of upgrades are really, really good and important for safety. And traction control, I was a long time, this is my traction control. But I really feel that it makes a big difference. It saved me quite a few times on gravel and corners, when the bike would have slid. And I have two bikes. The two behind me have none of those features. They don't have ABS or traction control on them. So when I switch from those bikes that do to these bikes, I notice it right away that I got to start thinking a little smarter here.
At what point is it a detriment to you? Dependence.
I think the BMWs that had ABS and had link brakes made people bad riders. Yeah. Because I know people that have come off those bikes and had accidents because they couldn't adjust to a sport bike that has all the grip on the front. It's possible that lead angle ABS would maybe helps that. I don't know. I mean, I don't have a bike with that particular level of technology, but I know that that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to give you that extra ABS advantage in a corner when the front does start to slip a little bit. So that would be, anything that's going to keep you off the ground. Now, that's kind of my theory now. If it's going to keep you off the ground, short of going slower. I don't want to go slower. I want to keep up my spirited pace of riding. So even because you could just go slower, and that's it. Because I have friends that just say, I don't need ABS. I don't need those kind of tires because the speed I ride, and that's true. if you're a very conservative rider, you can get 10,000 miles on a back tire. I get 1,500 miles on a back tire, and that's routine. I don't care what it is. Maybe a Road 5, I might get 3,000. But on a sport tire, 1,500 miles is all I'm going to get, and it doesn't matter what bike it's on because I'm on it all the time. And that's just the way I ride, and that's the way I like to ride. So, it's just you pay to play, I guess you might say. But I hear all these stories about, oh yeah, those Metzlers go 10,000 miles. That's such a joke. I've had Metzler Angel GT sport tires or touring tires. They don't last any more than anything else that I've had. Not even close. They might last a little longer. We're talking 500 miles, So, I mean, it's just the way you ride makes a difference on the wear of things. And probably that's why the suspension is important to me, because I adjust it, I tune it, I can tell when the shock's bad, I can tell when the forks need changing oil. I can tell that because I can feel it. I can feel the bike change, and I don't want that. Because to me it's a risk of me crashing, because if I'm riding close to the limit most of the time, then I don't want to be victimized by something stupid like a bad tire, for example. I didn't change that. And I see it all the time up in the mountains. People come up there, they spend all the money on the hotel rooms, the trailer, and everything else, and they got a bald tire. And I'm like, what the F, Well, you're spending all this time, your vacation time, your hotel, and you got $100 would have got you a new, maybe some of these tires, even if it's $200, it doesn't matter. I mean, to me, that's kind of an important thing, especially up there where the chance of rain is like every day. You can leave and it's like perfect, and you go over one mountain range and it's pouring. So I did not mention, I did have a sort of a soiree with dirt riding. And I had dirt bikes for a long time. KDX 200s were my choice because this mountain here. We got mown trails up there, 5 miles up. Did a lot of dirt riding. Did a little dual sport riding. I used to love that Cheehaw Motorway Skyway. Did that. I had a KTM EXC. I did that on that a while. I kind of, as I've gotten older, it's been just a little harder for me to do that. And I really never had very many friends that I didn't have it when the dual sport thing became really popular. It seemed like none of my friends were into it. So, and I'm one of these people that likes to ride with people. If I'm here by myself, I probably won't go out riding. But if someone says, let's go riding, I'll go. Yeah, that's just the way I am. I like to ride with someone. Not because I'm afraid to ride by myself. I just prefer it. It's just more fun. It's more fun. It's like two people skiing down a mountain as opposed to one or something. I don't know. If I didn't have any friends that ride, and it's fast becoming the case because I'm getting older, I am having to ride a lot more by myself. But what's happening is, since I ride fast, I'm getting a lot more younger friends, because those are the people who want to ride fast. So I am getting some younger friends to ride with, But there is a little change happening there where I told my wife I'd stop riding motorcycles at 70, and that was 10 years ago, and that was a lie, because I feel too good at 69. Yeah. So I imagine I'll just ride till I can't ride. I rode dirt bikes as a kid, but I never really rode dirt bikes. I rode on trails, right. But I didn't learn to ride in dirt until I got here, where there were mountains where you had to do hill climbs. Right. And go down washout ravines, and learn to there are hills up on top of this mountain here that are so steep that if you're not all the way literally kissing the front fender of that dirt bike, you're not going to get up that hill. It's that steep, and you probably a lot of times aren't going to get up anyway. So but my neighbor is gone now, he moved, but he got me back into dirt riding, and he had a KLR, but it was not like a KLR I'd ever seen before. It was a highly modified KLR. It had a gigantic rear sprocket on it, and everything was off. It was stripped down. KLR. It was a Trials KLR. In fact, later on, I asked him, I said, what was that bike you had? You know, because we used to be able to go up every hill comfortably, you know, no matter, and I was fighting him a lot of times. He said, it was just a KLR.
Wow.
And I'm going, a KLR? I think of that as just a big, heavy Kawasaki
Yes.
dirt bike, you know?
Yeah.
And he says, well, he said, mine was pretty light. It, you know, I had that gigantic sprocket on it and bored it out a little bit. And so it had some features to it, you know. But I've been with other people like Ken Cole's a KLR rider. I've been on that Cheehaw trail with him a few times, and we've switched bikes. And he always wants to switch back right away because the KLR is like a Cadillac in the dirt, you know. It's just like cushy, you know, easy going. But if you fall over, you got something. You got something to pick up. So. And so up there, I was always using a KTM 450 EXC, which was street legal, but really just a dirt bike with a tag,
Sure.
and but not comfortable really. You couldn't. But I could ride I could ride over there. I never trailered over there. I could ride the 80 miles over to Sylacauga and get on the trail and then ride home. But towards the end, like you said, the aging, and I was in my 60s. I felt pretty rough sometimes when I came home from those rides. All the Cliff Bars gone, Camelback drained. You know, searching for pain medication. So, and I actually last year, the Ducati came out with a thing called the Desert Sled. You may know about it. Their biggest selling motorcycle is a Scrambler, and the Scrambler series, there's 20 of them or something. They came out one that was more like a real dirt bike. They're Scramblers, like this is a Scrambler, sort of, but Scramblers that look like 70s Ducatis, you know. That's what that's their retro bike. But they came out with this thing called a Desert Sled, which was way more serious dirt. You know, it had longer suspension, it had a 21-inch front wheel, you know, and I got real interested in that motorcycle. But then the reviews killed it for me because everyone that reviewed it said it's still just like the other ones. It's not even close to a KTM or anything else that would be more viable in the dirt. And I've always been a feeling that I should have the bike that's for whatever it is I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And if it's dirt, I want a good dirt bike. Right. If it's street, I want a good street bike. If it's racetrack, I want a good track bike. If it's touring, I want a BMW or something that's going to tour good, you know, or more suitable to it, you know. And so I didn't get it, but I got close. I got close, but I think it was just kind of wishful thinking because the only friend I have that does dual sports up in North Carolina, and so I'd have to trailer up there, and I definitely wouldn't do dual sport by myself, probably. So, you know, and I probably would be harder for me to do than it. You know, I know it would be for sure. So, but I'm happy riding on the street. I mean, I have no problem using the streets as a racetrack. It doesn't bother me at all. I use radar detectors. I use Sennas to communicate.
Right.
Driving record's fairly good. I don't have any points on my license at all.
Because of your
I'd say mostly because of using a radar detector and the choice of roads. I don't speed on 280, you know.
Right.
And I learned the roads around here that are not patrolled, like
Right.
Goodyear Mountain Road never has a policeman on it, so I rail on that road. Stone Springs Road never has police on it. I run that road fast. Anywhere around Palisades Park, there's no police. Argo, Moody, Odenville, all bad places to go fast. Springville, bad place to go fast. They all use a lot of radar, ticket. They have a lot of patrol cars out. I don't race on the interstate. Occasionally, I'll go out on the interstate if I want to see, like the RC8. I wanted to see how fast it would go once, so I took it to 177 miles an hour on 59.
It's hard to do that anywhere else, right?
Can't do it anywhere else. I only did it once, and you know I know it's a risky thing, you know, because it would be jail time if you got caught. But I wanted to see if it would, But the bad thing about that was it made me think the bike would probably go 200 miles an hour. And makes in the back of my mind it's saying, I think that bike would go 200 miles an hour. So I got to keep that out of my mind, you know. Oh, there's places you can do, like if you're over by Talladega Speedway, those back roads around 395 or whatever it is that goes around to the little Cheehaw Pig Trail, those back roads, you can run those roads way over 100 because all the people that live there live by the track. So if a bike goes by them at 120 miles an hour, to them it's just like, hey, what's happening? Yeah. They don't react like people in regular neighborhoods that when you speed by, they go, we got children here, you know, or something. So you can find the places. You do have to work. Highway 25 used to be the track road, you know, but they patrol it. I mean, people get tickets, and the only way you can not get tickets on Highway 25 is to run from them. And that's all you can do on Highway 25, which incidentally is not hard to do. There's a lot of curves, and there's a lot of bailouts. There's bailouts all over the place. So people that ran it when I was doing it, we didn't worry about it. If we lit them up, we just kept going and just went into a driveway we knew or something like that. So I never got pulled over on 25, but I would say I've lit up police on 25 at least 20 different times for sure. And if they're turning around, they haven't got a chance. And the radio doesn't do them any good because the road's too short. And so they always say, you can't outrun the radio. Well, that's not true.
Absolutely not true.
You can outrun the radio. You just don't go where the radio is.
You don't get on the interstate and try to outrun the radio.
Yeah. You just have to pick and choose what you're doing. And as you know, and anyone who rides any bike at all, bikes just go fast. I mean, the bang for the buck, if you like speed, is in the motorcycle, not in the automobile. I mean, that Super Duke over there does 0 to 60 in 2.3 seconds. There's not a Ferrari that'll do that, really, I don't think. There's no Porsche that'll do that. I mean, if that's what you're into, going fast and saving money, a bike's your choice, you know. But, again, there's the risk, you know, falling off the thing, you know. Oh, music, okay. That's kind of why I came here, because the reason I came here is because, well, I had a job. That was the main reason I came here. Yeah. And California, where I was living, they renamed Santa Clara Valley Silicon Valley, and I wasn't in that industry. Mm-hmm. So it was the cost of living was just ferocious. So when an opportunity came to move here, and my wife was interested in living in the country and building a cabin, and I wasn't as interested in that, but I was willing to go along with the idea. So we came to Alabama knowing it would be a cheaper place to buy property and do all that sort of thing. But the other big motivating factor for me is I've been a blues artist all my life since I was a little kid. And when I moved to Chicago, that's where I really got involved in playing blues, not so much in the clubs because I was still a little young, but I got to participate. I got to go see the artists. I got to jam with some of them, and that's where I got my big interest in it. And then when I moved to San Francisco, they had an active blues scene there with John Lee Hooker and people like that, Canned Heat, and all those people that were out there, Janis Joplin. Janis Joplin is someone that I saw all the time as a kid when I lived out there. She was a local player at a place called the Family Dog. So I saw her a lot. So I had a lot of history in enjoying the blues and playing it a little bit myself, but not really a lot. I had access to the Fillmore West. I went there a lot, Bill Graham's Fillmore. Went to all the shows there as a kid. And so got exposed to the Grateful Dead a lot, just all those people. But the blues artists, the ones I really like, Johnny Winter, Muddy Waters, all those people. So when I moved to Chicago, it was just everywhere. I mean, it was there, and so I immersed myself into it. I took lessons. I did the most I could, but I'm not naturally talented at music, so I was never super good at it, but I got better at it because I kept working at it. And my instrument is the harmonica, so blues harp is what I play. So by the time I got here, I had played in Chicago some, I played in San Francisco some, just kind of a little bit. But by the time I got here, I was ready to form bands, and that's what I did here. I was in a couple of bands here that were pretty successful, and played all over the Southeast a bit.
What were your bands?
The Diving Ducks was my most successful band. Opened for Robert Cray at the Music Hall when they came on that tour, and different people that I played with. That was the main band I played with. Then a lot of other sort of offshoots of that band. And blues blues goes through these sort of cycles of resurgence where they call blues revivals. And one occurred in the 80s when I moved here. So Grundy's Music Hall downtown supported it, even though it was a jazz place. And there's just like blues all over around here. Beale Street was just a ghost town when I moved here. There was nothing on it. There was no clubs on it. It was just an empty street, and it became what it is now. It's more tourist now, but it became the blues coming back, kind of brought it back. B.B. King's Club and a few other clubs formed, and I played on Beale Street a lot. I did a lot of gigs with the Magic City Blues Society here, helped form that society here, and let's see, as a duo, I won the state of Alabama once and went to Memphis to compete in the international competition in 2010, I think that was. Yeah, 2010. Didn't win anything, but we got to go, kind of thing. So I played Phelan Park a lot. I've played Zydeco lots of times. I played just all the bars around the Oasis bar. Played that a lot of times. Topper Price was one of my best friends.
I was going to ask you about Topper. He's a harp guy.
He's the best harp player there is in town, or was. And he and I were good friends, and I would always try to get lessons from him or get tips from him, and he would always just laugh and go. He says, "You just do it," He was not a teacher. Let's put it that way. He was just someone that could play. And there's a couple other players around here. I was never like the player around Birmingham, but there's a couple others that. But I was in contention anyway, so I could get in good bands and play with some of the better guitar players around town. So I did that for quite a while, and I was in the Sky Dogs band for a while, which is a cover band, Allman Brothers cover band. I play with them once in a while. I was a booking agent for 29 Dreams for one summer. Did all the booking down there. Got Roland the Hay guys down there because I know them. Played with them a bunch. Most of them I just kind of played in and out with, but I haven't had I had a duo for a couple of duos were what I had for most of the time. Played a lot of the blues festival of Mississippi and Arkansas, King Biscuit. Got to play with some famous players. I did a King Biscuit show with Pinetop Perkins out of Chicago. So I've got to play with some really great players. They have live music too. And lately every year they've had the Sauce Boss. And he is really great. He's a blues player. I played with him a couple times there, and he what's his real? I just know him as the Sauce Boss. And he makes during his performance, he makes a pot of gumbo,
wow.
A big pot of gumbo,
wow.
And with a boat paddle, and everyone in the audience gets to come up and stir it while he's playing. So it's a lot of fun.
Nice.
A lot of fun. So he plays every year there on Saturday night. That's all included. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything to go.
Right.
But I always donate $20, $40 because I know there's got to be people spending money on all this stuff,
Right.
And most people donate like that too, I think, and that's why they can do what they do.
Keep going. Yeah,
keep going. Highly recommend it. Long drive down there, 353 miles to be exact, from my house.
Yeah.
This bike, after I got it, it was I got caught out in the rain on Highway 25, and I thought, I wonder if their traction control is that good and their ABS is that good. I said, I was going to see. So I rode up and down 20 in pouring rain, kind of spirited, and noticed that I had no problem. So I just stepped it up. So I went and started. At one point, I was going as fast as I could go around the corners in the dry, and going down the hills as fast as I could go, hitting the brakes. And never did it ever slide.
Wow.
Not even one time.
Wow.
So it was impressive in terms of what they have done with that. Now that's a late model bike. That's an 18. So of course the BMW is what it is. But it's when I bought this was the lightest sport touring bike you could buy. That's why I bought it. It had the lowest weight in its sport touring class, and it had some other kind of cool features about it, like 7 Torx fittings will take the entire bike apart.
That's nice.
So it's
That's nice.
really meant for traveling. I mean, the wheels comes off with a 50, the brakes with a 45, and you look at it and you won't get past 7 Torx fitting sizes. So
Nice.
small toolkit, you could pretty much do anything you want with it.